This is all about mindset. When you, again, conceive of writing a novel or want to write a novel or think about writing a novel, it seems insurmountable. Like, what even constitutes a novel? And that is definitely one of the important parts of the breakdown. Doing your research and finding out what actually constitutes a novel. 40 to 100,000 words, with the sweet spot being 80,000. Anything less than is a novella or short story. Okay? So now you've got the big overall concept of what constitutes a novel and what you have to work towards. Okay, so when I researched and discovered that, again, it almost feels impossible. How do I go from nothing to 80,000 words? Well, in actual fact, my novel is 114,000 words, a little bit over 114,600 and something. And I think it's 314 pages. So clearly, from here to here is possible, but how do we get there? And that is what I call the breakdown. And okay, the breakdown. Again, it seems almost impossible to write 80,000 words or even 40,000 words when you've never written anything close to that before. You may have written a few poems or short stories. You may be like me and write all the time in your career, but 40,000 to 80,000, possibly 114,000 words? How on earth do we get there? For me, it was about changing my mindset and breaking the concept or the idea of the book down into manageable chunks. So I broke it down into manageable. I'm a contemporary fantasy writer, or actually I'm a speculative fiction writer. I don't just limit myself to fantasy. I write kind of whatever I want to write. What if I just think about it in short chronological stories? And that is exactly what I did. So what I did was, remembering my book is literally called the Esther Chronicles. So what I did was I thought, what if I broke it down into a chronological list of short stories, 5 chapters per story. 5 chapters per story. Okay? And then because I was thinking of short stories and 5 chapters per story, I thought, well, what if instead of thinking of them as short stories, I actually thought of them as short books? So now I've got a chronological, list of books broken down into chapters, 5 chapters per book. Okay, that's what I have. So now what I'm looking at is, okay, this is a lot easier to write. And I actually format the Esther Chronicles in that exact way. Book 1, chapters 1 to 5. Book 2, chapters 1 to 5, and so on. Every book has a chapter. There are 13 books in total. Every book has 5 chapters, bar the 13th book. I think there's only 3. Right, that's just happened to be where it fell. But it did fall on the 13th book, which is really cool when you've got a story that is predominantly about demons. So 13 books, all bar the last chapter, the last book, 5 chapters per book. Each chapter has roughly 5 pages. Okay, so roughly, give or take, because I've got to make, you have to have form within your chapters, but don't worry about that. We're just breaking it down chronologically or breaking it down in some way so that our brain can conceive of doing something that we have never done before. Okay, so break it down however you want, with the idea that you've got to get to 40,000, to 80,000, to 100,000, like me, just over 114,000 words at some point. Anything shorter is a novella or a short story. Okay, now for me, I broke it down into chronological short stories with a format in terms of how many, a formula in terms of how many chapters and pages per chapter each one would contain. So what I did was I began with the first book, the first 5 chapters, and then the second book, the second 5 chapters, because basically all a novel is all of those chapters all joined into one. That's all it is. So if you can mentally break it down so that your brain can conceive of doing something it's never done before and not get overwhelmed, right? Not convince you it's too hard and to quit before you even start, okay? Break it down. I broke it down into chronological short stories. You can use that formula. You can think of your own, but find a way to break down what you are doing into manageable chunks and just tackle one chapter, one book, one whatever at a time. And before you know it, like me, you will have a fully written novel, 114,000 words, 314 pages or something like that. And, and you would have achieved your dream to write a book. Break it down into manageable chunks.